My name is Angela Valentine, and I want to tell you something that happened to me and my brother. I kept this horror experience to myself until now. First off, have you heard of Caillou? If so, then you should know how horrible a kids show it is. It's about the adventures of a bald and frustrating spoiled brat named Caillou. Like I can't say. I like the show, and you all know why too. It's a horrible influence on my brother, who watches this horrible excuse of a kid show. Now anyway, here's the main topic. I have to tell you of what happened. My brother got the whole pack of the Caillou DVDs for his birthday, which really got me grown in frustration. I mean, I'd rather watch creepy Teletubbies show than that shitty show. After his birthday party, my dad put one of the DVDs into his DVD player he had in his room. I couldn't even stand or see that goddamn show. I plugged my ears so I wouldn't have to listen to that horrible theme song. I went to my room and turned on my laptop to do some work. That's when my mom knocked on the door. I answered her and she asked me if I can watch over my brother while they go out to a party at my dad's work. I said yes before my mother thanked me. I gotta be honest, I'm the only one who babysits my brother, but that's besides the point. 5 minutes after my parents left, I heard my brother screaming in his room. I immediately rushed into his room and asked him what was wrong. He told me the girl on the show scared him. I looked at Caillou episode, and what I saw on the title menu really made my eyes wide. On the title screen was a young girl on the screen. The girl looked a little bit older than Caillou's sister. She didn't look normal. She had Rosie's red hair, and at least I thought it was Rose hair. She had a pale white skin. She looked at me like if she was waving. She had an evil smile that wasn't normal for a little girl. She was wearing an orange shirt with a dress-style overalls. But what made it even more strange was that there was a heart on the palm. On top of the menu simply said Calliope. I asked my brother if he clicked play, and he shook his head no, and he told me he put the disc in, and it showed random trailers of kid shows and even the old My Little Pony cartoon. I clicked play to see if was the information on this creepy girl and what this episode was about. It's an episode at all. I told my brother if he sees anything creepy, he has to cover his eyes immediately. He nodded. Before this show's intro started, I plugged my ears once again. For the remainder of the intro, I was relieved that it was over, though once the intro stopped, the title card appeared with Caillou with a worried expression while looking at Rosie, who had her back turned. The title read, Calliope. The title card faded, and then it showed Caillou's house. Caillou can normally be mad or get along with Rosie, although on this particular day, where Caillou had a traumatic encounter with a young girl that Rosie thought was her friend. And it was the very first time Caillou being protective of his little sister, the narrator said, although the tone went from its usual happy tone to a slightly serious tone. That made me puzzled a bit, as she just said, the very first time Caillou is being overprotective of his little sister? What is that supposed to mean? The show then faded to a backyard where Caillou was playing with his toy fire truck while Rosie was playing with her dolls. Rosie asked Caillou if she could play with his fire truck. No surprise, Caillou said no. Rosie frowned a bit before walking off to resume playing with her dolls. This is where things started to become intense. Rosie turned to see something underneath a bit of dirt. She walked over to it and it looked like it was a doll. A dirty rag doll with pigtails chipped, hips and buttons, and even had its eyes. Rosie then picked up and looked at it curiously. A dolly? Rosie said in confusion. Do you like it? A little girl's voice said with curiosity and a hint of disturbing. Rosie then looked to see a little girl right in front of her. She was no doubt the same girl on the title screen. From what me and my brother know is that she is some sort of new character. She was a bit taller than Rosie and yet a bit short than Caillou. Judging from her appearance, she didn't have more than 5, maybe 6, 7 maybe. Anyway, Rosie looked at the girl with curiosity. Before she smiled at her and waved her hi, Rosie responded. Hello, did I startle you? She said. not with the same tone. No, Rosie said. She shook her head. Well, that's good, the girl said. I'm Rosie. What's your name? Rosie asked the girl, but she didn't answer. You scared? Rosie asked. No, I'm not much of a talker, that's all. I'm sorry, the girl replied. My name is Calliope. It's very nice to meet you, Rosie. Calliope was somehow politely introduced with what sounded like a disturbing smile. Me and my brother highly doubt that Rosie noticed anything. Who would frickin' notice it at her age? Before Rosie could reply, Caillou, who noticed Rosie was talking to someone, he walked over to her with a confused look. Rosie, who are you talking to? Caillou asked, out of curiosity. Calliope, Rosie said, simply replied as before she pointed to the girl, who turned to her brother. I don't see anyone, Caillou replied, as he turned to see nothing. Rosie then looked to see that there was no one there too, and that's when Caillou looked at the doll and she picked up. Where did you get the doll, Rosie? Caillou asked. Rosie pointed to where she found it, and Caillou took another look at the doll, and it made his expression immediately turn into fright. Caillou looked around before he took his sister by the hand fearfully and took her inside. Both the younger siblings entered the kitchen. Doris, who is Caillou's mom, turned to see them and hear them enter. Oh, lunch isn't ready, Doris said, but she trailed off when she noticed Caillou's expression. Caillou, what's the matter? You haven't been scared since last Halloween, Doris said as she sat down. Mommy, we need to talk, Caillou said as he stuttered. What's wrong? Doris asked, before she noticed the doll in Rosie's hand. Rosie, dear, where did you get that doll from? Doris asked. She found it in the backyard while she was playing, Caillou answered when he turned to Rosie, before looking at the doll in fear. Rosie, go watch TV in the living room. Big brother needs to talk to Mommy, Rosie said, as he led Rosie into the living room. That's when he sat down with his mother, and he said, while shaking in fear, Mommy, something's wrong, really wrong. My brother and I have never seen Caillou this scared, although neither did Doris. What's bothering you, Caillou? Doris asked, in worry. Well, you see, when I took a look at the doll for the second time, I got scared. I don't know why, but I really feel worried about Rosie, Caillou explained. I don't know what is making you so afraid of the doll, Caillou. Was there anything else that happened? Doris asked. Before Caillou can reply, Boris walked in. Hey, honey, who's Calliope? Boris asked as he rubbed his head. Caillou took a look at the living room. He gasped when he saw Calliope next to Rosie. He could swear that the girl was not there before, although he did take a closer look at her. Calliope then ran to him with an outstretched smile and a crazy look to her eyes. Caillou screamed as he fell on his butt. Boris and Doris looked over to see their son sitting on the ground, looking like he'd seen a ghost. Caillou, you okay? What happened? Doris asked, as the two parents kneeled down on their each side. There was someone or something with Rosie, Caillou said shakily with fear. Doris and Boris then looked to see no one but Rosie sitting in front of the TV. Caillou, I'm in no mood for your jokes, Boris said sternly. Boris, look at him. I don't think he's joking, Doris protested. He sees Caillou wasn't joking at all. He was definitely scared. Caillou, I don't know what you saw, but you're right. Something isn't right, Doris said with worry as she looked up at him and helped Caillou up. I feel very, very, very worried for Rosie, Mommy, but I just feel scared, Caillou said, and worried as he whimpered. Caillou, you're actually scared for Rosie, Boris said, as he started to feel scared as Doris and Caillou. This made me and my brother wondered if Calliope was a ghost. I mean, what I heard, the little children can hear ghosts or hear anything supernatural. But why was this episode created? Anyway, it cut right to the nighttime, and Caillou was wide awake. I can't sleep, Caillou muttered. That's when I began to hear footsteps. He immediately turned on his flashlight, and when he turned to see the source of the footsteps, Rosie, how did you get out of your crib? Caillou asked. He was surprised to see Rosie out of her crib. Calliope, no, like you. Rosie said to her big brother. What? Caillou simply said with a confused expression. Then he turned to his flashlight to see Calliope standing next to Rosie, glaring at him. Who are you? Caillou asked in fright. Rosie's new friend, Calliope said with a frown. Whatever you are, you leave me and my sister alone, Caillou demanded while trying to hide his fear. You think you could keep me away from Rosie, you bald-headed, spoiled brat? Calliope said with a cold tone. Caillou then grabbed Rosie's hand and pulled her close. I may throw fits, but it doesn't mean I don't care about Rosie, Caillou protested. This made Calliope very displeased before she turned into a shadow and tried to grab Rosie. But Caillou scared her off with the flashlight. A horrified scream in the shadow flew out of Caillou's room. Rosie, it's best if you fall asleep with me tonight. I don't trust that monster, Caillou said. As he turned to Rosie, he then spit something on his baby sister's palm. It was a heart. Caillou gasped, thinking that he got marked by the ghost. The next day, Caillou and Rosie entered the kitchen. Rosie was her usual self, but Caillou was tired. My goodness, you don't look so good, Caillou. Didn't you sleep? Doris asked, as she was getting a bit worried. Caillou explained what happened last night before Doris gasped in fear. Strangely, I believe that. That was a very brave thing you did, Caillou. But next time, come get Mommy and Daddy. We heard screaming last night and it wasn't human or anything, Doris replied with worry. Whatever it is, Rosie calls her or it Calliope. I have never seen a kid like that before, Mommy, Caillou said with worry. Sweetie, unless this house is haunted, we can't assume yet, Doris said as she placed a hand on her son's shoulder. Haunted? Rosie asked. What does haunted mean, Mommy? Caillou asked. Haunted is an adjective. It means a ghost in this house, Doris explained. How can you even explain that to a kid? So before Caillou can even say anything, a scream was heard from the backyard. The three rushed in the backyard to see Boris frightened on the ground with a shovel in his hand. Doris, Rosie, and Caillou rushed him. Daddy, what's wrong? Caillou asked. But of course, Doris then looked to see something what really made her gasp in fright. Ugh, what's that awful smell? Caillou said in disgust. He plugged his nose, and that's when he had the same expression as Doris. He then turned his head. What me and my brother saw was horrible. Boris had dug up a dead body of a child. It was similar to Calliope, though from what we saw, it was nothing but a skeleton, covered in worms, and its clothes were turned. Its head were torn. But Rosie didn't even know what was going to be looking at. Rosie, close your eyes, Caillou said, as he covered Rosie's eyes to prevent her from being traumatized. Who is it? Who would do this? Doris asked. That is when something clicked into Caillou's head and said, That's Calliope. Both parents had just looked at their son before looking at each other. Caillou, call the police and stay with Rosie until we go inside. Doris ordered with her son. What about you two? Caillou asked. We'll be fine, Caillou. Just go inside with Rosie and call the police, Boris said. That's when Caillou went inside with Rosie and called the police. Just after the call, Calliope appeared. Caillou made sure that Rosie was behind him. Give me my friend. I cannot go without a friend, Calliope spat. No, she's my sister, Caillou protested, as he kept his ground to make sure Rosie is safe. She has to come with me. I don't want to be alone. All alone, Calliope shrieked as she scratched Caillou on the chest. Caillou grunted as he stood his ground. He tried to make another 2 times to make sure Rosie is safe, but to get Caillou out of the way, but Caillou didn't budge. Calliope, it hasn't half this way. Don't you have anyone that could be had before Rosie? Think about it. Listen, if you take Rosie away from me, Mommy and Daddy will be sad. Is that what you want? Caillou asked. No, I don't, Calliope said, as she calmed down and fell to the floor. Caillou then rushed to as Rosie was sad. Listen, you probably have a friend, but taking Rosie away won't solve anything. Don't you have friendships up there? Caillou asked with sympathy. It surprised me that Caillou hasn't thrown a fit even once. That's our Duke character. But beside that, Calliope then looked at Caillou with tears in her eyes. Guess you're not really that bad, Calliope said, then looked up at the light and shined on Calliope. Goodbye and thank you, Calliope said, as she smiled and flew to the light. The light then vanished, and Caillou turned to Rosie. Brother hurt? Rosie asked, as she rushed to Caillou. I'm okay, Rosie, although this is the baddest boo-boo I'll ever get, Caillou said as he rubbed his scratch marks. Rosie then smiled a little before she had frowned. Caillou, me have no friends, Rosie said sadly. Rosie, that's not true. I'm your friend and your brother. I always will. Maybe when you start school like I did, you'll be able to make lots of friends, Caillou said. Wisely, the two siblings hugged and laughed, and then it cut to the police in the backyard while Doris was bandaging Caillou's injuries. I don't know how you got these scratch marks, but I could say it hurts, Doris said. It was worth it to protect my sister, Mommy, Caillou said. The more you learn, Caillou, the surprise we get, Doris said in a half-serious tone. I'll be sore for a week or two, but that's the most important, that my sister Rosie's okay, Caillou said as he smiled, and his sister was playing with her usual dolls. The doll that Rosie had found was bagged as evidence. A title card was shown as Caillou and Rosie hugging. It was later found out that Calliope was a lonely girl who was murdered and buried in the spot where Rosie found the doll. Caillou and Rosie had never forgotten that fateful day. When the two got older, Calliope's killer was never caught. Her murder remains a mystery. Another title card appeared as Boris and Doris were looking at each other. Boris and his wife never knew that Caillou saw, but they knew that Caillou was trying to protect his sisters from something, unnatural or not. The police had no further evidence following the murder of young Calliope. Then the episode ended with the credits rolled. What the hell was even that? We may never know. What we understand was some sort of crime/haunted story. Damn, it scared the shit out of me and my brother. We never told our parents. I mean, who the hell would not believe in this anyway? Anyway, it was about 4 weeks later. My brother never watched Caillou again. I'm relieved about it, but also weirded out. Anyway, if you find a Caillou or any show disturbing, do not look. If you do it then, I won't stop you. And that, my pretties, was Calliope, a Caillou Lost episode creepypasta written by BadHarleyluck31, or also known as Queen Riley, Leave Free. My final thoughts on this story. Well, I have good things to say about this story, but I also have some things that need to be worked on. Now, overall, I actually found this story to be kind of interesting. You know, taking the fact that there was this girl that was murdered named Calliope, and Rosie, talks to her or something. And I mean, the whole idea of Caillou investigating, knowing something paranormal happened in his house. I mean, it's honestly pretty interesting at that to see it, because we all know a lot of TV shows have done paranormal stuff. Take a look at Gravity Falls. I mean, I think this inspiration kind of reminded me of Gravity Falls a little bit, because, Gravity Falls has done, going through paranormal stuff in the past. And there were episodes where it involved some paranormal activity. But I could definitely say this story honestly has a really good concept. I mean, the only things I could really say was the fact that this story was in a big giant paragraph, so it was confusing to read at certain parts. But if they were separated a bit, the paragraphs were separated, not jammed up into one big paragraph, that would make the story a lot better, but it would make it more easier to read. So does that kill the story? No. Not entirely it kills the story or anything. I mean, the cliche with the DVD and all, I mean, some of the cliches in it, yeah, I mean, that kind of knocks down a few points from it, so that's something I'm going to be honest. It just kind of knocks down a few points because of the cliches. I still thought that the story or the concept looked pretty nice for the story. I mean, the fact that, Caillou is, experiencing paranormal stuff, that's honestly quite interesting. I honestly thought that was really interesting. Although, it kind of makes me wonder if if they would actually make a Caillou episode involving something paranormal, like a haunted house or something. I mean, a Halloween special episode involving that might be something, but this, I could definitely say, this would be more of a PG-13, episode, if this episode ever were to exist. Now, I'm going to be honest right now, I never liked Caillou as a kid either. I don't know when I was a younger kid, I liked him, but now I'm older, I don't really like Caillou. I mean, I can understand why. It's because of the circus tantrum. That's pretty much one of the main reasons why people don't like Caillou. I mean, hell, I remember Caillou joins the circus. Oh my god. The part where he threw a tantrum was just, ugh. But you could definitely say right now, I mean, this episode would pretty much be banned if it ever were to exist. But seeing Caillou dealing with something paranormal, I mean, I could more likely see that in Gravity Falls. Because, well, Gravity Falls has done stuff like that. And Loud House obviously has done paranormal stuff. But I never expect a Lost Episode pasta of Caillou to involve something paranormal. That was quite interesting. But despite the fact that, the whole thing is in one paragraph, it could be separated in a couple paragraphs at a time. So, yeah, that way it's not confusing to read. I really found the concept was awesome with the storyline. It was just flat out amazing. I really personally thought it was a pretty good story. And yeah, I did spot some grammatical errors and some punctuation errors in the story. So, yeah. That's another thing I kind of want to point out, that the grammatical errors and punctuation errors could be fixed with Google Docs and that. So I can definitely say, those could be fixed up. But despite that, I honestly thought that this one was a pretty good movie. Well, not movie, but it would be a pretty good episode, or maybe a TV movie involving Caillou. Who really knows? But in the way that this episode described, they would probably have to do this in the most kid-friendly way possible, because Caillou's mostly for kids, so, yeah. Unless Caillou's, unless this one becomes like a PG-13 episode or something. Well, like I said before, I'm not really sure much, but yeah, that's just all I have to really say. But I guess with that being said, and that being the case, I don't have anything else to say about this story, but I have to say, BadHarleyluck31, you did a pretty good job with the story. It was a pretty interesting one. I did have fun reading this one. And yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've touched a Caillou Lost Episode story. I think the last one I did, I think it might have been a Funny Pasta by Matthew Bumford, or maybe it was the, Caillou Says Goodbye to Gilbert. It might have been one of those. I don't really remember, but yeah, I'm hoping to read some pretty good Caillou creepypastas in the future if I ever find them again. So, anyways, with that being said, like I'm going to say, this is just simply my own personal opinion, and if you happen to disagree with me, that's fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regarding these creepypastas, and this is just simply my own personal thoughts. My final rating is I'm going to give this one a 6.5 out of 10. I'm giving it a 6.5 out of 10 because the concept seems really interesting, but I did have issues such as, the DVD cliches, the fact that, there was grammatical errors and some punctuation errors. The story was in one giant paragraph, to which it was really confusing to read. And another thing, too, was that I did find the ending wasn't really the best, but here's the thing. It's hard to end a good Lost Episode creepypasta or a decent one without a cliche type of ending or something. But other than that, I thought this story was alright for what it is. I mean, not perfect, but definitely not terrible. So anyways, what did you guys personally think of this story? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what you have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Feel free to leave me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. I'm the Lion Queen. I want to thank you so much for watching today's episode. And if you're new to my channel, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Ring the bell for notifications to when I upload, so that way you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, please roll the outro, because I'm out.